this video, we're going to describe the SMC motor system, the components, and how to install them. First, we're going to start off with the SMC Smart Motor. The 2 feet that come with it and 4 bolts, the motor controller, the power wire cabling, the 7-conductor cabling that connects the motor controller to the motor, as well as the motor data cable, which connects the data stream from the motor controller to the motor. One of the many things that are very unique about the SMC Smart Motor is that we have different feet to adapt to any motor. So when you get your motor kit, you'll have to install the feet on the motor prior to installing the motor. The other thing that's unique about the SMC Smart Motor is that we have 6 power leads instead of 3, and we also have a 7-wire motor data cable that feeds all the data from the motor sensors back to the motor controller. This is the SMC motor controller. Underneath the terminal cover, we have an upper layer of terminals that are for the main power input as well as the power to the motor, and on the lower terminals we have the low voltage control inputs. This is the main power input terminals. These 2 sets of terminals are for the leads going to the motor, and the lower terminals are the low voltage control and communication terminals. So the first step in installing the SMC motor system is replacing the existing induction motor. The replacement of this motor and installing of the new SMC Smart Motor is no different than any other motor replacement we've done in the past. It's simply a matter of disconnecting the belt, disconnecting the power leads, unbolting the motor, and bolting the new SMC motor in, aligning the pulley, and reinstalling the belt. Same process we've done for years. Now that we've got the motor replaced and the SMC Smart Motor is installed, we need to install the motor control. This motor controller can be mounted in any position, and keep in mind that we want to keep it away from vibration, and that we're going to probably use the existing power leads from the motor to power up the motor controller. So in this application, I'm going to mount this on the side wall with the connection points on the top so I can easily run the wires in and out at the top of the unit. In some units, you may not have room on the sides of the fan, and you may have to end up mounting it on the base plate. If the mounting location is going to make the access to the terminals in a difficult position, you may want to wire the wires to the terminals prior to actually physically mounting the controller. Now that I've got the motor controller mounted, I'm going to install the motor data cable. On one end there's 7 conductors, on the other there's 6. The side with 7 goes to the motor, and they are all marked with the terminals D1 through D7, as well as D1 through D6. So when you're terminating them at the motor controller and at the motor terminal board, it's very easy to connect them. Now that we've installed the motor data cable from the motor to the motor controller, the next step is to install the Modbus cable between the motor controller and the SMC supervisor controller. It's a 3-wire conductor. Each of the wires have labels on it to make it very easy to land on the terminals on both the motor controller and on the SMC supervisor controller. Now that I've got the Modbus connected between the motor and the motor controller, the next step, depending on your application, is to install wiring to control the motor controller. And in this application, we're on a rooftop unit. I'm going to run thermostat cable from the motor controller to the wires that are coming from the thermostat so that we can intercept that and control the operation of the unit through the motor controller. If you notice, I've wired all the low voltage wiring through the center knockout, leaving room on the 2 outside knockouts for the incoming power and the outgoing power. I've terminated all the wires, which are on the back terminals, and now I'm going to run the motor power wire from the motor to the motor controller and land it on the outside terminals. So now that we've run the incoming power into the motor controller and we've run the 6 leads from the motor controller over to the motor, we're ready to start the unit. As you can see, this is not much different than a typical install that we would normally do with an induction motor, with the difference is we're taking the incoming power, landing it here at the motor controller, and then taking the 6 leads from the motor controller to the motor.